Welcome to the first module in class. I'm going to show you a quick slideshow of some of the things we're going to be talking about in class, the concepts, the kind of photographs, some compositional elements, and then black and white and color and some other things we're going to be covering. So this is not going to be testable. Put your note-taking material away, sit back, relax, and just kind of take it all in. So look for leading lines, right? Look for quality of light. That light that then creates an interesting shape or pattern. What's being lit and what isn't being lit. Make sure that the most important parts of the images are being lit. Are images better in black and white or are they better in color? Does color make it more distracting? Does black and white make it look more antique or old or unimportant? Or maybe it makes it more archival and more precious. The iconic flag, this is shallow depth of field, just that leading edge of the flag. You don't have to have everything in focus. We know it's stars and stripes. We know it's an American flag. So it gives an interesting quality of depth. And can we go black and white? I don't know, maybe. Color's probably better since it's a flag. Quality of light. This is not anything special. This is just a window in my spare room, light coming through, the baby's very close to it, and so we're getting that beautiful soft light over half of his face. And is it black and white or color? Sometimes we do go black and white for babies because of that red pigment. Makes it look a little funky. So sometimes black and white is a choice for newborns. Black and white or color, this is predominantly black and white with the cat and the fence, except for the trees. Probably simplifies it and draws more attention to the cat if we go black and white here. Again, black and white or color, this is shallow depth of field. So the background kind of goes away, just the dog's face is in focus. And then black and white or color. Maybe color because of the red and the green, those colors tend to respond very well to each other or create some interesting contrasts. Shallow depth of field, this is in a parking lot in Yosemite. There's cars, there's people. It's all out of focus. I'm focused just on the leaf and just on the structure, the cell structure of the leaf. It's really a beautiful color picture also. Orchids, always a great choice for photographs. Greenhouses provide a beautiful quality of light, whether it's the greenhouse they have up in San Francisco in Golden Gate Park or some private greenhouses. But that quality of light in there is so beautiful, and the interesting exotic shapes of the orchids. You can go to the farmer's market here at West Valley and buy an orchid for $5 and spend the whole weekend shooting it and come up with some absolutely amazing images. Macro, who likes macro, right? This is not any special lens. This is a regular 50 millimeter lens. I took it off my camera, I flipped it around backwards, and I held it up against the camera so no light got in. When you reverse that 50 millimeter lens, you get 1-to-1 magnification. Now, it's not elegant. It's not perfect. You got to move forward and back to focus. But for $100, you can buy a 50 1.4 or 1.8 new and use that for a regular portrait lens or a street photography lens. And then if you do want to get close, flip that lens around and go right in on your subject, and you can get 1-to-1 magnification. Shallow depth of field again. This is a wolf in Yellowstone. He's in a paddock behind a fence, but you don't see any of that behind him. But that rim light, think about how you separate the object from the background. That sunlight going all the way around his face and highlighting that fur with just enough light in front so that we can see the sparkle in his eyes, or her. This is when we had the Grand Prix in San Jose. Always a fun thing to shoot. Little chain link fence in front with a shallow depth of field. Fort Point, another great place to do photography, whether it's black and white or color. This is on the San Francisco side of the Golden Gate Bridge, right below it. It's free. You can go in there. You can bring a tripod. You can make photographs all day and get some stunning views of the city, some stunning views of the bridge, and some amazing light that comes in there. Even on a wet and stormy day, you can find some absolutely amazing images in these little caverns. And this beautiful brickwork that they have in there. So please, if you're up in the city, take advantage of that. Low-key images that are predominantly dark in tones, not a lot of highlights, give you a little bit more of a mysterious feeling. So how do you want the viewer to respond to your images? Think about that when you're taking them, and what you choose to include in terms of light and subject, and what you choose to exclude from the image. Repeating patterns. We'll see a lot of these images again come up in the actual lecture content, but I'm just kind of giving you an overview now of what they're all about. So this is a repeating patterns. All these birds are very close to the lens. You see the ocean behind them. It actually creates a bit of a rhythm just in its repeating patterns. You really can't tell they're birds because they're, no shape in there is the same. Well, maybe there's a couple if you look really hard. Think about where you're shooting, looking up, looking down. Sometimes we're standing in the middle of the photograph. Sometimes if we just look up, we might find a really interesting photograph. So think about, be aware of your surroundings when you're out making pictures, especially when you're looking for that found image. This is a case of looking up, playing around with some texture of those old oak trees. We got so many of these beautiful old oaks on campus that are so fun to photograph. They have so much personality and so much interest. Little rule of thirds, kind of breaking the pattern, the frame up in thirds with one of these old oak trees and the gnarly branches, giving it that nice high contrast between the background and the foreground. Another rule of thirds, we have the lower third, that grass, we have that tufa tower up on the right third, and at the top, upper left third, we have that little cotton ball of clouds up there. This is from Mono Lake over on the Eastern Sierras. This one I worked hard at trying to figure out exactly where to line up these elements. Again, the rule of thirds, the yellow buoy fits up on that left third, the red circular buoy is up on the upper right third, and then we have the green net kind of taking care of that bottom area of the photograph, giving it a base or a place to land. The horizon line, you can put it anywhere. You can put it on the upper third, lower third. You can put it in the center. Oftentimes the center needs to be a pretty deliberate choice because it does cut the frame in half. And you want to be careful about that decision because it can get a little monotonous. It can get a little predictable. But maybe that's what you want in that photograph. Here you almost have to have the horizon line on the upper third to be able to include the surfers down in the lower right third. There's me out there shooting at in Hawaii, using those palm trees to be the third markers. The way it fills the frame, nice curve. Think about the angles. Think about where your eye goes in the frame. Right. This is one of those shots where I kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer, and finally he got pissed and started chasing me. But that's another story. But looking at that curve that he has, the texture, and that gesture almost that he's making with his face. This is the moment. All right, you may like cats, you may not like cats, but I was there to photograph a flash test for my cat, and during the shoot, he decided to yawn. I was ready, I got the shot, and if you like cats, it's got to make you smile, because you know how they are when they yawn. They have that cute little look on their face. So again, think about the moment. Sometimes the moment rules everything. It beats composition, it beats exposure, it beats framing, it beats anything else we talked about. We're going to talk about, because it is the moment. And we'll see images like that throughout the semester that are the moments that define a time. And those images disregard everything that's formal about photography and is just about capturing that moment and telling that story. Now, of course, this isn't one of those images that's going to capture this moment and define his time. It's just a picture of a cat smiling. This is another moment, right? For her, for this little girl, looking at that video camera, trying to figure out that lens cap, that interesting little look on her face. This isn't what I was there to photograph. I wasn't photographing her for her parents. I was photographing my nephew at a karate. He was doing one of his katas to get a belt increase, I guess they call it, or graduation. And she just happened to be right in front of me. I happened to see her out of the corner of my eye, and it was a picture I just could not take because of that beautiful, inquisitive look. The green spot, maybe some of you heard about this, maybe you haven't, but if you are in the right place at the right time and the sun's going down and you can have a clear view of the horizon right when that sun hits the horizon on the ocean, the light rays go through the top layer of the water and they create this green flash. And it is seconds, not even seconds, less than a second. So it's one of those moments. Not a great picture, not incredibly sharp, right? But it defines that moment. Thinking about stopping action, giving people places to move. He's going down that wave really fast. He's in the upper left. He's got all the way through the frame to travel to that lower right, coming down that wave. So it's comfortable. He's got room. He's not going to crash. There's no edge tension. Fast shutter speeds can freeze things that we can't normally see. Now we could see this wave breaking on this rock, but you can't really study, all the subtle colors, that subtle green that's in there. There's a lot to it that we can't really see the moment it happens. But in taking a photograph, we have the ability to study it. I did this in my garage, took a lot of beer and a lot of swinging the hammer, but this is basically freezing the hammer as it broke the bottle of Corona. The bottle of Corona is still, the hammer's moving, and I rotated it 180 degrees to make it look like the bottle was moving and the hammer was still. You can see a little blur to the handle of the hammer. Long shutter speeds can give you that feeling of motion, right? Cotton candy in the water. These usually require a tripod or some way to stabilize the camera so the things that aren't moving in the photograph are in focus and those things that are moving aren't. Again, the cotton candy, right, or a very smooth technique of water. Panning, following the subject with the camera with the slow shutter speed, so you have the foreground or the background out of focus and just part of the subject in focus. In this case, it's only the collar. Everything's out of focus here, but you get that momentum. You get that energy of the dog running through the tall grass. Again, panning, moving the camera with the subject. In this case, everything's out of focus except for that fender. But it has an interesting kind of almost painterly quality to the leathers in the motorcycle. Again, my nephews playing on their bikes, pretending to go really fast, and that can be accentuated by the idea of panning. We had a powwow here at one point, and that was a nice way to shoot some motion with some of these in-between shutter speeds and get some movement in the frame. Again, one of the in-between shutter speeds. The aspen trees, leaves are just quaking a little bit, so we're getting some movement. Some are still. Here's that kata that I was photographing where I got the little girl in the video camera. He's got his fists that are moving, but his face is still, so it gives it some energy to the photograph. Not as much blur as I'd like with the car coming in, but you get a little bit of it in between shutter speeds. This is just taking the zoom barrel and moving it in and out. With a long shutter speed, of course. But basically, I'm creating this motion, these lines emanating from the center of this Ferris wheel, right? It's just me zooming in and out. So you can play with motion and at night photography, which will have some assignments, by doing it yourself rather than just letting something move in front of you. Scale. Think about that. Think about showing the size relationship to things. That chip is really not very interesting if it's just floating there in black. The finger somehow gives it some context. How close is too close? I don't know. Right? I mean, this really gets up close and personal with their eyes. Right? The hat. Right? There's no extra room around the frame. So is it too close? I don't know. It's probably not a classic portrait, but she was a musician and it probably works for that. How close is too close? Right? You gotta think about that. In some of these cases, it's a little uncomfortable for the subject as well, because the camera's right in their face. So, you have to be a little bit careful in terms of lens choice and things like that. Here, shallow depth of field. Not a very interesting background behind this woman scientist with an electron microscope, but by putting that molecular structure in the front, positioning her eyes in between one of the little holes, you can then kind of get a sense of the foreground background relationship and then what she does. Studying the molecular components of substrates through the electron microscope. And scale, right? Again, how close it is. What do you put in the background? What do you put in the foreground? And you don't have to get crazy with light. This is available light. This wasn't a whole big fancy shoot. This was run down, take the photograph. And don't be afraid to twist the camera. Go a little Dutch angle. Get a little angle on the camera if everything looks too linear or too straight. So think about, everything doesn't have to be level. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. And then, this is a photograph that I took in my backyard. This is a bush that flowers every single summer. That's the pool in the background. I've seen this every single summer for I don't know how many years. But all of a sudden, the light that day was kind of special. My mood was such that I really saw this in terms of those beautiful colors coming together. And I got this photograph, which, compositionally, I don't know if it's great, but I think the colors work incredibly well together. And then, of course, we can just have fun with photography. We're in a time right now where social media allows us to post and share, put photos up there, either be silly or be serious, have a business front or just a personal storefront for the kind of photography you're doing, and to give other people feedback and get feedback on yourselves. So it's a time in which we can have a lot of fun with photography if we're not going to make it that job, but in fact we just want to make it that thing that we can go out and get away from it all and put all of our energy into making photographs. All right, so that's a taste of what we're going to have this semester. Looking forward to getting into the next module with you all. Thank you all.